we are hooked up right away. And it is just kind of another one of these cookie cutter. It's going to be 95 degrees today, so we got out here nice and early. And actually did not get right on the fish on the first pass. And oh my gosh, look at this. We just got it. Just went through a pot of fish. We are doubled up right now. Oh, we got nice walleye on number 1 here. And I had absolutely no idea what to film today. Oh, he's digging now. Had absolutely no idea what to film here today. And we used to film a bunch of videos kind of as you were reaching kind of the next season, kind of on favorite upcoming lures. And man, we have just been thrown into, hopefully that fish, I think he is still on. We have just absolutely been thrown into the summer patterns here. The weather has been just absolutely insanely hot, and I've never seen water temps this warm in early June. There we go. There's a nice about 19-inch walleye number 1 here. We're just gonna go right to the other rod here, and we're doing obviously one of my favorite presentations for this time of year right now. You guys, the last video we probably posted was of spinner rigging, and that was yesterday. And I didn't really want to come out and film the same thing, so we're gonna cover a whole bunch of presentations today and kind of walk through where we use them, when we use them, and all that kind of stuff. But the spinner rig bite, definitely on. And I absolutely love trolling. Some guys are like, I don't want to troll. I'll catch walleyes however they want to be caught, but trolling is one of those things that's just, from afar, might not look that technical. It might look like more of a just spread a whole bunch of stuff out and catch fish, when in reality there's a lot going on. And I absolutely love the technical side of running large trolling spreads. Catch back up to him here. Oh no, he just came off. He came off right there. We fought him the whole way. But spinner rigging, I guess we'll just start with spinner rigs here. We're going to cover, like I said, a few different lures here, but spinner rigging is one of those things that normally gets good along with a leech bite, and which generally, you know, starts happening in that kind of I would say early June period a lot of years. Now, most of the time when we start doing this, we're doing it in like 5 feet of water, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 13 feet of water. And we're going right through a lot of that new cabbage that starts popping up, kind of on your first break. And depending on where you are in walleye country, that pattern might still be going on, especially if you're farther north, or kind of depending on the lake. You know, obviously if you're in more of a staying system, that way it works really good. And we've posted a bunch of videos doing that, where we're kind of pulling spinner rigs by hand, right? Normally on a spinning rod, normally we throw it out the back of the boat with a bullet weight on, and we're pulling that thing along, you know, at 1.2 miles an hour. We're, like I said, we're just covering a lot of that first break stuff. You know, you got that first big flat or big hump that goes out from, you know, 4 feet of water all the way out to 12 feet of water. And wherever that kind of first break is, wherever it kind of starts tailing out, is a lot of times, you know, where you get that first weed growth, and where those fish will sit for the bulk of June, when you got water temps from the upper 50s, you know, kind of into that mid 60 degree range. Now, this year, we already have water temps that are 72, and those temps are penetrating a long ways down into the water column, just because it's been so hot, and we've had wind along with that. So with that being said, these fish have pushed out even a little bit deeper now, and they're setting up in a lot of this kind of, I would say, 15 to 22 feet of water right now, which is kind of more of a middle summer time frame, but it's happening everywhere. And a lot of times, like I said in the last video here, I'm pulling a lot of leeches or single hook rigs like that. Clearwater, I like a lot of my blues, purples, silvers, hammered nickels, hammered golds. And then a lot of times I'm running a bottom bouncer. If you are fishing a shallower system or a very weedy area, like a 3/8, ½ ounce, 3/4 ounce bullet weight, just slid onto that line above the harness, would be a great way to fish that thing. Now today, as you guys, if you watched the last video or not, I'll link it down below. But today what we're doing is, like I said, we're pulling this over a lot of these extensions. So I'll throw up like a screenshot right here. These are the kind of areas right now where we're pulling spinner rigs, and spinner rig is an incredibly effective way to cover a lot of water with a live bait presentation, right? And you know, we obviously do a lot of slip bobbering. You can jig fish with a leech. It's not necessarily the leech that makes this presentation good. It's when you have fish spread out over a large area, which is generally something that starts happening quite a bit more like this time of year, right? Once you start getting that water warming up, you know, they're starting to push off of that first break stuff, and you get fish kind of roaming a lot of these flat areas or just off of that first break stuff. So a lot of times, you know, the weeds keep coming up, you get fish really scattering out over larger areas, and a lot of times this is when pulling spinners like this on planer boards and spreading lines out works incredibly well. So it's a great way. Now if you drive around this lake and all you saw was like you know, 3-4 big pods of fish all nestled in tight to 15-foot rock, not a good time to spinner rig, right? Better off slip bobbing or jig fishing, something that casts at an isolated target. Where right now, our scenario where we have fish very spread out, ideal time to be trolling like this. All right, we kind of already hinted at it a little bit, kind of one of my absolute other favorite presentations. Here come the jokes. I feel like I'm saying absolute favorite a lot, but there's a bunch of absolute favorites I have, so that is, I guess it is what it is. But slip bobber fishing, you guys have seen us do an absolute ton of slip bobber fishing. It's just an unbelievably effective way to catch fish when fish are in generally an isolated location. And most of the time we're fishing these, generally it's a lot of, especially this time of year, it's a lot of, I would say, 12 to like 18 feet of water, especially this time of year. You can do it deeper, obviously, but this time of year, this early summer into summer transition, generally the slip bobber bite starts slowing up a little bit, kind of closer you get to 4th of July, right around the 4th of July, depending on the year. But especially when fish are in the zone and they're all balled up on structure, whether that's a weed edge, an inside weed edge, outside weed edge, whether that's a point, whether that's a rock hump, anything like that, especially in that depth range where you might have a sweet spot on a piece of structure. Like let's say you got a rock bar that's all kind of gravelly, right? And then right in the tip of it before it drops to deep water, you get a couple of big boulders. Perfect spot to slip bobber, because a lot of times fish are going to be real isolated there. And most of the time I'm rigging these up like you guys have seen before. I like to run them on 7.5 foot Elliott rod, 10-pound braid, slip bobber on there, and then the clearer the water, the longer the lead. Real clear water today, so I got a bunch of these like 3.5, 3-foot leads tied up with 8-pound fluorocarbon. And most of the time this is not a kind of thing where you know, we're going to throw these out, anchor for a while. We're going to throw them out to that isolated piece of structure where those fish are that we found on either side imaging or 360 or sonar, and we're just going to let, you know, generally I'll cast a couple of them out, let them sit on that sweet spot for 5 minutes. If they get bit, we'll normally catch them right away. If not, we're just constantly moving. This is not like sit and wait for a super long time style of fishing. And generally that slip bobber bite starts going about when you get water temps in the upper 50s to low 60-degree range. And like I said, it'll kind of continue until you get, you know, kind of to that midsummer 75-degree peak. But a lot of times this kind of same temperature coincides with bug hatches, and pretty much no matter where you're walleye fishing, I can almost guarantee you that a slip bobber and a leech will catch a fish this time of year. I'm almost always running a jig on these unless I'm fishing in like 2 feet of water. And when I'm hooking these, I like to hook them just like that, kind of double hook them like that, and they stay super lively on there. You can see how dancing around that guy is. Don't hook them right in the middle, don't hook them in the tail, hook them just like that. They'll stay on a long time and they'll stay incredibly lively. So slip bobber fishing, deadly effective, as you guys have seen many times on this channel this time of year, and they're absolute suckers for this thing pretty much everywhere. But if you're fishing a more clear water system with a lot of clear water where those fish are just they're very visually sight oriented, and it's just a killer way to stick a bait in a fish's face and leave it there for a very long time if need be. So super effective way to fish. You guys have seen us do it a ton. The slip bobber absolutely has to be included in the early summer to summer time frame of favorite lures. All right, another one you guys have seen us do a little bit on the Mississippi River, I guess, on the last week here, but is jig and plastic. Now, this early summer into summer time frame, when we start getting water temps above the 50-degree range, minnows are kind of out for us at that point for a lot of things, except for like specialty use type of things. And most of the time, you know, you guys have seen us catch a ton of fish on jigs and plastics like this kind of throughout the course of the spring. The only real difference is normally we go up in size of the jig and up in the aggression as well, because generally these fish are sliding a little bit deeper. Generally they're biting pretty good. This water's warming up, they want to feed. And most of the time I'm throwing 1 of 2 baits. This is the 3.8-inch Kalen's Tickle Tail swim bait here. And my other favorite, which I always have a few ready to go, is a Kalen's Jerk Minnow Jr. right there. And I think a 4-inch or something like that, but it's right around there. I'll link them down below. And basically, you know, in the spring what we're doing is we're getting this thing out here quite a bit. Most of the time we're fishing on a 1/4 ounce. We're going down to bottom and we're doing more of something that'll look like this, right? This time of year, water's warm. Like I said, fish are generally very active. And what we're doing is either more of something that looks like that real big crack, let it hit bottom, crack it, let it hit bottom, or we're kind of doing this quick, hard pull like that. that gets it a little bit more springy in there, right? So normally it's one of those two things. Most of the time we're working it aggressive like this, covering a ton of water, and like I said, that's kind of the reason we go to that 3/8 too. You know, you get in 14, 15 feet of water on a weed edge right now, or on a big flat where these fish are relating to, and you start bombing this thing around, you can cover a ton of water, and it's one of the absolute funnest bites. Now, fish in my area have become so unbelievably pressured that it's the days I do this are the days they're really biting. But I pretty much everywhere I go this time of year, you can pretty much catch a fish on that bait right there, that exact setup. So most time where I'm fishing this, like I said, scenarios where I'm trying to cover a bunch of water. You know, if it's more of a real isolated thing, I just keep making that same 10-foot cast. Not the lure for that situation. Definitely a lure for if you're on a big flat and you're going to be kind of working down it, or just covering a huge sweet spot like a big weed point or something like that, firing this thing around, and it's really killer in any of that water that's really like 12 feet to like 20 feet really, which is a lot of times the sweet spot this time of year. Cast it out, pop it around, make sure you're hitting bottom every time, and most of the time the strikes are just absolutely explosive. You'll hit bottom, you'll go to pop it up again, and you'll just get boom, that real hard jig knock, and obviously set the hook. So super fun way to fish, super effective this time of year. And snap jigging plastics absolutely has to be on the list in this early summer to kind of summer transition time. All right, presentation number 4 that we fish a lot this time of year, and this one's a little bit more nichey for me. On a lot of the lakes that I fish here, it's not as productive, but pretty much it seems like everywhere else I go, whether that's northern Minnesota or whether that's a big river system, is crankbaits. Crankbaits, and you'll kind of see a common theme with a lot of these presentations, that they're geared towards kind of covering more water than we previous were. And as these fish generally push off a lot of the real shallow stuff, which they are and have now, they end up kind of sprawling across many more of these flats, which is the perfect time for presentations that obviously cover more water. One bait that you guys have seen us using a ton is the Rapala shad dancers here in the number 5. In our Mississippi River videos, these fish were just absolutely destroying this bait, and it's kind of got a perfect depth zone. It's real knocky and kind of erratic, which is good for when the water warms up, but it's kind of got that perfect depth zone for covering a lot of these areas that we're fishing right now. You can send this thing back about 100 feet and you're going to be down knocking bottom at about 13. So for a lot of those fish that are relating to this 10 to like 15, 17 foot stuff, you know, it's kind of like the perfect offering right there. And I always really have a soft spot in my heart for a lot of these smaller crankbaits. I think a lot of times when fish don't necessarily want to eat crankbaits, it's much easier to get them to trick into eating a smaller one versus a big knocky larger one. And a lot of these smaller crankbaits, whether it's a shad wrap or a shad dancer like this, kind of have that perfect you know, like I said, kind of targeted dive curve for a lot of these spots. And most of the time we're fishing this on the river, we were fishing this just on big flats, just kind of like you would up here on a natural lake, these big shallow flats. We were trolling it much shallower because the water was very dirty, but phenomenal way to cover water. You know, put the boat in gear, send this thing back 70 feet and fly around at 2.5 miles an hour. Great way to catch fish this time of year almost anywhere you're going to go. Now on a lot of like the more clear natural type of lakes, or we might have to get a little bit deeper, one of my favorite ones would be like the Rapala tail dancer, and this is in the 15-foot variety right here. And a lot of times if I'm fishing clear natural water, I like these chromy ones, this pink one, the blue one, your purple descents, those type of colors. And this is another deal over here where we got, you know, the same kind of thing. We can get this thing down to 17 feet, you know, running real quick. We can cover a lot of water, and it's perfect for covering a lot of these flats. Whether you were fishing a weed edge in 15 feet or 12 feet, those fish pushed off and they're a little bit deeper now, or they're halfway kind of suspended in that 20 to 25 foot range. You stick this thing down there 17 feet, fly around with a bunch of rods out, and you're definitely going to be around those fish. So you know, trolling presentations are always a killer, really anytime midsummer, and almost no matter where you're going to go. Trolling is just a super effective way to cover a lot of those different depth zones that are much more difficult to do while casting. And whether that's a spinner rig or either of these two crankbaits right here, very productive way to fish when fish are spread out over large areas. All right, the final bait that kind of really becomes a player this time of year, and you guys are going to be all excited about this one because you guys are always incredibly excited about this one. We have not filmed this one yet, but in the next coming weeks here, you guys are going to see this obviously become a huge player. And we always like to kind of get this information out before we really get to that time frame, and that is the Acme Hyper Rattle right here. I don't know how many videos you guys have seen me film on this lure, probably dozens and dozens and dozens by this point if you've been watching this channel for long enough. And this is kind of like your jigging wrap, traps, kind of like your shiver minnows, but it's the speed jigging style of lures. I've been using the Acme Hyper Rattle for a bunch of years now, and it is just unbelievable what this bait kind of does in the water, and how effective it can be. And it's crazy when you watch it. We'll try to throw some footage up here that hopefully I have archived somewhere at home. But generally when we're fishing this time of year, clean bottom is generally what you need. So when a lot of these fish start getting out of the weeds, or kind of sitting on some of those rock piles in 15 to 20 feet of water, this one kind of becomes a huge player, and it's really going to be a huge player all summer long. But generally we're pitching it at fish we see and kind of sharp shooting them. So we go over a pot of fish or spot them on side imaging on a clean bottom area, pitch it out and start cracking that rod real hard. Now this bait's kind of twofold. It catches a ton of fish that are negative because it's so snappy and so unbelievably aggressive, and it catches fish that are feeding because it's just it's too much of a trigger for those fish to handle. And these baits have probably been the #1 selling walleye lure almost probably everywhere for a while now. This whole style, whether that's the shiver minnow or the jigging wrap or the Acme Hyper Rattles, things just flat out catch fish, right? And this thing is pretty much indestructible. I mean, you can just catch a million fish on these things before they break. And I normally fish the larger size. This is the one that has the 28 gram on the bottom. It's the biggest size they make, and just unbelievably powerful tool. But like I said, you guys will see us fishing this a whole bunch, and as the season progresses into that midsummer, and really it's a phenomenal fall bait too, but anytime we start getting fish on clean bottom areas outside of 15 feet, this bait comes into play. If you don't have confidence on these lures, pick a bunch up in a few different colors. If you're a dirty water guy, look at your fire tigers, your oranges, your bright green stuff. If you're a clear water guy, the purple ones, these gold ones, your clown ones, things like that are going to be great options. But phenomenal tool for really just fishing very fast and aggressively, right? And it's like I said, 99% of the time I'm fishing this lure, I'm not blind casting it. I know right where fish are. So I'm pulling up to a spot, I'm driving through it, I'm seeing the fish, I'm spot locking with my boat, and I'm short pitching to fish, or sometimes going straight vertical once those fish get deep enough. And you're basically just sharp shooting those fish. See them, cast at them, catch a fish, right? It's a very immediate, responsive type of thing. So like I said, you'll be seeing a whole bunch of the Acme Hyper Rattle here as the season progresses, and probably, we could probably start doing it today if it wasn't going to be 95 degrees out, and I'm not going to be out here during that. But yeah, that's definitely a go-to this time of year. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this quick little rundown on some of our baits coming up. We used to do a whole bunch of these videos, and yeah, it changes every year. Kind of the lures that I find most effective. Some of them, seem to get replaced with other ones throughout time. But the premise a lot of times stays the same. In this time of year, you have fish generally sliding deeper. Whether you're fishing kind of an isolated, picking those fish apart type of a thing, like a hyper rattle or a slip bobber, or a moving presentation that's meant to cover a lot of these flats outside of that shallow structure, like trolling a crankbait or a spinner rig. Everything's going to have its time and place, and a lot of times, on a really good day, you might be able to go out and catch fish on every single one of these things. But almost everywhere I'm going to go for the next several weeks now, you can guarantee we'll probably be catching fish on one of these 5, I forget what we even said, 4, 5, 6 presentations, right? They're just kind of the standby. And these category of lures, whether you're trolling a spinner or a slow death, pretty much a similar deal. Whether you're throwing that Kalen's jerk minnow junior or the swim bait, they serve the same purpose. They're meant to be casted a long ways and snapped, right? So keep these things in mind if you guys are going to be walleye fishing a bunch through the next couple weeks here. You'll definitely see me using a bunch of these lures. And yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up there. I appreciate you guys watching. If you're not yet, please subscribe. Stay tuned for more content. We'll see you next time.